A 18-year-old girl goes to meet her online boyfriend. She expects a sweet 25-year-old college student, but a 35-year-old stranger shows up instead. The gift he hands her isn't flowers, but a set of red lingerie. If it were you, would you dare to run? Today's film, Trust, exposes traps every parent and daughter needs to see. It tells you that the scariest part isn't how perfect the scam is, but that even when you're clearly in danger, you still make excuses for him. 18-year-old Annie is like many teenage girls, average grade, a little shy. On her birthday, her dad, Will, gives her a laptop. He hopes it will keep her company, never expecting it will push her into the abyss. Late one night, Annie enters a teen chat room, and a user named Charlie messages her. At first, Annie doesn't think much of it, treating him just like any new friend. Their chats start off perfectly normal. Charlie encourages Annie to play sport. When she feels insecure, he gently comforts her, saying, "You're the coolest girl out there." Annie can't help but smile. From then on, they chat constantly. From school gossip to her deepest secret, they talk about everything. Annie becomes glued to her phone. Seeing her so absorbed in chatting, her father asks about this friend. Hearing he comes from a good family, her parents let their guard down. Soon after, Charlie makes a small request. He asks for a selfie. Annie poses in front of her webcam for ages, finally picking the best shot to send to him. But when Annie asks to see Charlie, he suddenly goes silent. After a long pause, he confesses the truth. He's not actually 18, but a student at UC Berkeley, and that he was actually 20. Annie froze on the spot. A flash of uneasiness crossed her mind, but she quickly rationalized it. A 2-year gap isn't a big deal, right? Besides, Charlie was always so gentle. Whenever she was feeling down, he always knew how to make her laugh. So, Annie softened quickly and messaged him first. Minutes later, the screen lit up. Charlie sent over a selfie, clean-cut short hair paired with a sunny smile, instantly dispelling all her doubt. Annie couldn't take her eyes off the screen, a smile quietly creeping onto her lip. But predators always start testing boundaries with small lies. Every time you forgive them, it becomes a stepping stone for them to push further. From then on, their calls became more frequent, talking for hours at a time. Lying on her pillow late at night, Annie couldn't help but fantasize about them meeting. Just the thought of it made her heart race like it was about to take flight. But a few days later, Charlie apologized to her again. He confessed he wasn't a sophomore, but a graduate student, and that his real age was 25. Annie finally snapped. She screamed into the phone, but Charlie's voice remained as gentle as ever, filled with self-blame and reassurance. The guy was like a master psychologist, first softening her anger with apologies, then soothing her insecurity with concern. Annie's questioning grew weaker. Even scarier was his use of emotional blackmail, constantly planting subtle suggestions in her mind. "I thought you were different from other girls, that you wouldn't care about these superficial things." That sentence was a precision trap, latching firmly onto Annie's vanity. After just a brief exchange, she actually chose to forgive him again. When someone manipulates you by saying you're special, it's not a compliment, it's a shackle designed to control you. Then Charlie started pushing the envelope. He didn't just ask for provocative photos. The chats became increasingly explicit, way beyond the boundaries appropriate for her age. But Annie was completely absorbed in it. She was totally oblivious that she was walking right into the trap Charlie had carefully laid. Annie was glued to her phone, staring at the screen even as her family was leaving. Only when her parents reminded her did she give her brother a half-hearted hug goodbye. Watching their car disappear from sight, once Charlie knew Annie was home alone, he immediately asked to meet up. Annie hesitated for a moment, but finally decided to meet him in person. She dressed up for the occasion and went to the mall where they agreed to meet, texting him that she was waiting on a bench. Suddenly, a strange voice spoke up. Charlie scrambled to make excuses, and Annie finally realized she'd been tricked. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she just wanted to escape, but Charlie wouldn't let up. He played the victim while using the emotional card, "It's still me." Annie cried and asked why he lied, but he just kept twisting his words. Under his relentless psychological pressure, Annie's defenses crumbled. Charlie seized the moment to confess his love. It was those words that finally made Annie nod. She chose to trust him and agreed to leave with him. By chance, Annie's best friend witnessed the scene. She was confused, but since she was with a customer, she couldn't run over to check. The two of them walked into an ice cream shop. Annie looked at Charlie with total trust, completely won over by his sweet words. He opened up, sharing stories about his family's death. Seeing that Annie was fully under his spell, he decided to push things further. After finishing the ice cream, Charlie offered to drive her home. Once in the car, he suddenly handed her a fancy gift bag. Annie looks inside. She freezes. It's sexy lingerie. Annie's fingers go cold. She senses what he wants. She hesitates, but doesn't refuse. You'd think that once they're in the room, the monster would reveal himself. Wrong. The best predators act like protectors. His kindness is the drug. Not until Charlie tells her she she looks beautiful, and places his hand on her shoulder. Does Annie realize something is wrong? She tries to push him away, but it's too late. She loses her virginity. Even worse, he'd hidden a camera under the pillow to record it all. But after that day, Charlie disappears completely. He won't answer her text or pick up her calls. It's like he vanished into thin air. Annie acts like she's lost her soul. She's constantly in a daze. At first, her parents don't think much of it. They assume it's just school stress or too much pressure. Unaware of the nightmare she's living in, her best friend notices something's off. She quietly asks her about it. She realizes Annie's been played, but Annie is too deep in denial. Then, a teacher interrupts class and calls her to the office. When she walks in, she realizes her friend told the school everything. Before she can react, right in front of everyone, the police take her away for questioning. Her father, Will, rushes to the station. When he learns what happened, his world collapses. Their precious little girl has been so cruelly violated. It's a pain no parent should bear. The medical report confirms it. Annie was indeed sexually assaulted. The moment she saw her parents, she finally broke down completely. Since Annie was a minor, and the case involved cybercrime, the FBI quickly took over the investigation. Annie handed the clothes she wore that day to the police. Watching this unfold, her father's heart was bleeding. Then, the police examined Annie's computer. They combed through her chat logs with Charlie, finding that they hadn't just chatted online often, but had also spoken on the phone multiple times. To track this predator down, the police asked Annie to contact Charlie again. But after the message was sent, Charlie didn't reply for a long time. Her father wanted to wake his daughter up to reality, but Annie was still lost in his fake affection. Just then, Charlie actually replied. The police told Annie to act worried and ask why he hadn't called. He was cautious with every reply, but soon enough, he actually called. On the police's signal, Annie answered the phone, but almost immediately, her mother's cell phone started ringing. Before they could silence it, the call with Charlie was cut short. There wasn't enough time to trace it. Annie ran back to her room in tears. It turned out, Charlie had found her mother's number online. Being so cunning, he exposed Annie's setup with a single call. The police found absolutely no leads at the hotel. Charlie hadn't used an ID to check in, and his number was from a burner phone. Even worse, the address he registered was in the Czech Republic. His tracks were completely covered. All of this proved he was a calculating, professional criminal. After the incident, Will was haunted by the thought of his daughter's pain. He couldn't focus on work at all. The rage and guilt were driving him insane. He felt he had to do something, so he bought his daughter a new phone. He sternly warned Annie not to contact Charlie again. He said he would check her call logs constantly. If he found any contact, he'd confiscate the phone. Annie lowered her head, saying nothing. Furious, her father tossed the phone at her, then turned and slammed the door. The oppressive tension was suffocating for Annie. Even worse, the secondary trauma was just beginning. Annie refused to admit she had been tricked. She spoke to her therapist, Gail. Gail felt helpless and tried to warn her, but Annie wouldn't listen at all. She still completely trusted Charlie. She even blamed her parents for overreacting, for dragging in the FBI, and scaring Charlie away. Her parents had vastly different attitudes toward her. Her mom tried to reach her with gentleness, hoping that family love would help her slowly heal. Her father, however, became extremely paranoid. One day, he brought home a stack of mugshots and forced Annie to identify Charlie. Annie endured looking through all the sketches, but Charlie wasn't in any of them. She finally snapped. Annie stormed back to her room. The bond between father and daughter was shattered. Even more absurdly, Will was unsatisfied with the FBI's progress. He secretly hired a private investigator, determined to track Charlie down. Mom was frantic when she found out. Afraid of re-traumatizing her daughter, she warned her husband to stop immediately, but Will wouldn't listen. He even found a suspect on his own and secretly stalked his every move. During a session with the therapist, Annie still firmly believed in Charlie. When the doctor brought up that day, she wasn't repulsed by it at all. She even considered it just a relationship experience. The doctor patiently tried to explain the reality, but Annie refused to discuss it further. She preferred to keep believing in Charlie rather than face the cruel truth. To catch Charlie as fast as possible, Will's behavior is getting increasingly erratic. He's actually posing as a teenage girl to chat with strange men online. When his wife catches him, he claims he's just trying to flush out the predator. Seeing him so obsessed, she feels helpless to stop him. After taking some time off, Annie decides to return to school. Her worried mom tells her not to force it, but Annie insists on facing it. Seeing Annie back at school, her best friend rushes over to apologize, but Annie snaps back at her. Will checks Annie's phone every night, only relaxing once he confirms she hasn't contacted Charlie. He even waits for the police to look away and steals his daughter's case file. When he sees what's inside, he's consumed by rage. He swears he'll find the culprit and tear the bastard to pieces. He relentlessly questions Annie, asking if she's been in touch with Charlie. Annie finally can't take her father father's behavior anymore. Even though she voluntarily hands over her phone, Will still won't let up. He keeps tearing open her wound. Annie screams in a total breakdown. Meanwhile, the FBI finally gets a major breakthrough. Through a database match, they finally identify Charlie. He's a suspect in multiple child sexual assault cases. The youngest victim was only 12. This monster never stopped. Not until this moment do we finally understand why Annie refused to admit she was tricked. She wasn't desperately defending the liar, but the broken part of herself that felt love. Admitting it was all fake would mean shattering all her beautiful illusion. That disillusionment hurts more than the abuse itself. That night, Annie sneaks out of the house. She goes to see her therapist, Gail. Inside the office, she completely falls apart. Annie finally wailed and admitted, "He likes me." The moment those words left her mouth, the Annie who lived in that fantasy died right then and there. Meanwhile, Will was still hunting for clues. Seeing this, his wife finally snapped. She blamed him for never comforting their daughter, but only triggering her trauma further. Isn't Annie's well-being more important than revenge? Will argued that he just wanted to catch the culprit, but his wife wasn't buying it. To help Annie move forward, her family encouraged her to get back to volleyball. On the day of the game, Will took time off work to watch. He sat in the stands, eyes glued to his daughter, but when he spotted a man with a camera snapping photos non-stop, he suddenly flashed back to the camera. Charlie had hidden under the pillow. His sanity instantly collapsed. He charged over, snatched the man's camera, and the crowd went into an uproar. It wasn't until a girl ran over crying, "Daddy," that he realized he'd attacked the wrong man. Annie witnessed the whole thing, frozen in embarrassment and pain. Back at home, Annie finally blew up. She screamed at her father through her tears, before running to her room sobbing. But things were spiraling way beyond what Annie could handle. Classmates were spreading photos of her everywhere. They photoshopped her face onto lewd images, branding her a shameless slut. When Annie saw this, she completely broke down. She rushed straight home, thinking of her recent nightmare, and the suffocating tension at home. She couldn't take the torture anymore. She decided on a desperate escape. Fortunately, her best friend sensed something was wrong, and alerted her parents just in time. Will frantically burst into the bathroom. Her father snatched her back from death's door. But think about it. What pushed Annie over the edge this time wasn't the predator, but her own classmate, her school, and even the very father who swore to protect her. That night, her best friend never left her side, helping her survive her darkest hour. When Annie got up for a glass of water, she saw her father wrapped in a blanket, sitting all alone in the yard. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept a wink. The man finally realized he was wrong. He shouldn't have turned his rage at Charlie against his own daughter. After all, in this tragedy, Annie was the true victim. He wept tears of regret, hating his own negligence, and heartbroken over what his daughter endured. Holding her, Will realized that his fight for revenge had only crushed the last of her dignity. We always try to clear the path for our children, but we forget to catch them when they fall. Many people finish the movie asking, did Charlie ever get caught? The film doesn't say. He might still be out there, preying on other children, but that's the harsh reality of this film. Not every criminal gets brought to justice, and not every tragedy has a happy ending. Yet, even so, Annie and her family found their own way to heal. This film rips open the most painful wound of the internet age. Annie's story isn't an isolated case, it's a snapshot of the traps behind countless screens. Those sweet words from predators are just carefully crafted bait, designed to hunt the innocent. But even crueler is the secondary trauma. A father's interrogation is a branding iron. Classmates' whispers are daggers. Internet rumors are acid. Every probe of concern just grinds into wounds no one can see. The victim bears not only the first assault, but the struggle to survive the gossip that followed. The film's sharpest critique lies right here. It's not just the crime itself that destroys a person. It's the cold indifference of the world that followed. Healing, but look at that final embrace in the morning mist. It offers a faint, yet steady glimmer of hope. True healing begins when you let go of anger and accept your own vulnerability. The father finally realizes that more important than the hunt is being there to catch a soul that's falling apart. We must all remember this. Never punish yourself for someone else's crime. Those invisible scars need a warm embrace, not harsh judgment. Don't share this video just because it's tragic. Share it because it could save a life. Tag the people you care about. It's the most direct way to protect them. May every child stay safe from the abyss, and may every parent be the rock their child trusts most.